The previous day's words echoed in Amanda's mind, as the sharp, biting tone she had directed toward the soldier on the flight now felt like a weight on her chest. What she'd said, what she'd thought, now seemed unbearable. What was just another moment of frustration had quickly turned into something far more haunting. The reality of it, the truth she'd never expected, was too much to process. It was too late for apologies now. The airport had been a frenzy. People surged through security, weaving like a river of chaos. Announcements hummed from the overhead speakers, lost in the bustle, as luggage wheels clattered relentlessly across the floor. Amanda, caught in the storm of it all, was already at the end of her patience. She'd been through hours of delays, her schedule torn apart, her energy spent. By the time she made it to gate C-17, her irritation had reached a boiling point. She moved with purpose, her mind a swirl of frustration, silently cursing the endless lines and endless waiting. Her back stiffened with every step. Her breath came in short bursts as she finally reached the gate. Boarding had already started. She could feel her temper flaring with every passing second. There was no time for niceties, just an overwhelming need to escape. As she shuffled down the jet bridge, squeezing past passengers, the air felt thick with her impatience. When she finally slid into her seat, 17B, right in the middle, she let out a deep sigh. A middle seat. She hated them. Especially on packed flights like this one. To her left, the soldier was seated. He sat upright, his back straight, his eyes locked on the small oval window beside him. Calm. Composed. He seemed untouched by the madness that had swirled just moments ago. To her right, a young woman was buried in her book, her oversized headphones draped over her ears. As Amanda shoved her bag under the seat in front of her, she caught the soldier's glance. It wasn't a look of annoyance, nor was it friendly, just neutral. But Amanda, already on edge, misinterpreted it. She couldn't help herself. Well, I guess we're all crammed in like sardines, huh, she muttered, half to him, half to herself. No response. No smile, no acknowledgement. His silence only fanned the flames of her frustration. Annoyance bubbled up in her chest, and she tried again, this time with more bite. Flying on taxpayers' money, I see. Her words dripped with sarcasm. The soldier didn't flinch. His gaze remained fixed outside, steady, as though her words were simply not worth the energy. Yes, ma'am, he replied, his voice low but unwavering. Amanda's irritation flared. She hadn't expected a quiet, measured response. What happened to the quick comeback, the sharp retort? Instead, his silence made her feel as if her words were dismissed. Well, guess discipline means keeping your mouth shut, huh? She pressed, her voice louder this time, hoping for a rise, for something, anything, that would let her know he'd been affected. But nothing. He just stared out the window again. The tension in the air thickened. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The woman with the headphones pretended to bury herself deeper in her book, and a man a few rows behind frowned, his gaze darting nervously between Amanda and the soldier. But no one spoke. The silence stretched long, suffocating. Amanda seethed inwardly. The plane lifted off, its engines roaring to life, and Amanda leaned back in her seat. But her frustration wouldn't dissipate. It lingered like smoke in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about the soldier's silence. Why hadn't he reacted? What was wrong with her that she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been judged? His calmness was maddening, and it gnawed at her. Minutes dragged by. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity. Amanda shifted in her seat, eyes flicking again and again toward the soldier, trying to catch a glimpse of something, anything, that would show he was bothered. But there was nothing. He was a still, calm figure in the midst of her turmoil, unshaken by her words. At one point, the flight attendant passed through with the drink cart. A brief interruption, a momentary break in the tension. Amanda ordered a coffee, black. The soldier, on the other hand, requested water. Their exchange was polite, curt, and brief. As the attendant handed the soldier his bottle, Amanda muttered under her breath, "Guess even soldiers stick to the basics." The soldier turned to her then, his expression calm but firm. "Ma'am," he said, his tone polite but with a trace of steel beneath it. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just here to get home." His words, measured and steady, should have diffused the situation. But Amanda wasn't ready to back down. She crossed her arms and turned away, muttering under her breath. A slight flush crept up her neck. Something stirred in her chest, a flicker of discomfort, but she quickly buried it. After all, she was too tired for this. Around them, the other passengers could feel the tension, the awkwardness of the moment. The woman next to her shifted closer to the window, distancing herself further. A man further up in the cabin watched cautiously, his gaze lingering on the situation, ready to intervene if things escalated. But the soldier's calm presence held the storm at bay. The rest of the flight passed uneventfully. Amanda stewed in her own discomfort, her irritation still simmering just beneath the surface. Every time she looked at the soldier, she felt it, a strange, gnawing feeling she couldn't shake. What was it? Guilt? Defiance? When the plane finally touched down in Dallas, Amanda was one of the first to grab her bag. Eager to escape the confines of the cabin, she rushed down the aisle, avoiding looking at the soldier as she passed him. But as she walked by, she couldn't help but feel his eyes follow her. Her cheeks flushed again. Outside the gate, she rushed to baggage claim, determined to forget the encounter. It would fade. It had to. But it wouldn't. The next morning, Amanda sat at her kitchen table, the familiar aroma of coffee filling the air. Her tablet sat in front of her, as usual. She absent-mindedly skimmed through the news as she sipped her drink, her thoughts half elsewhere. But then, her eyes froze on a headline. Local soldier killed during humanitarian mission overseas. Her heart skipped a beat. Something about the image accompanying the article felt familiar. She hesitated for a moment, unsure. But her finger instinctively hovered over the screen, and before she knew it, she clicked to open the full story. The moment the page loaded, everything around her seemed to freeze. There, staring back at her, was the face of the soldier from the flight. Nathaniel Carter. Private First Class Nathaniel Carter. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes scanned the article, unable to believe what she was reading. Nathaniel had been deployed to a war-torn country only weeks earlier. He had been part of a team evacuating families from a conflict zone. His team had been ambushed during a rescue mission. But Nathaniel, in the midst of the chaos, had shielded 2 young children with his body. He had sacrificed himself. The children survived, but Nathaniel hadn't. The words on the page blurred as her mind struggled to comprehend. This was him, the same soldier she had insulted without a second thought. The one who had sat quietly, enduring her harsh words without so much as a flinch. Now, he was gone. The weight of her actions, of her words, crashed over her. The tears welled up, but she couldn't stop them. The guilt overwhelmed her, and she clutched the edge of the table, struggling to breathe. How could she have been so blind? She remembered his quiet dignity, how he had taken her sharp words without flinching, without striking back. Now, with the knowledge of his courage and sacrifice, Amanda felt a deep, hollow shame wash over her. Her hands trembled as she closed the article and set the tablet down. For the first time in years, Amanda couldn't escape the ugly truth about herself. Her frustration had fueled her words, but now, those words felt like a burden too heavy to bear. She wondered if Nathaniel had gone home to his family after that flight. Had he carried her words with him, or had he brushed them aside, too focused on his duty to let them linger? The thought weighed on her. She buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her face. The sobs weren't just for Nathaniel. They were for everything she had ignored in herself, for everything she had failed to see until now. Her mind raced with the words she had said to him, each one echoing louder with every passing moment. She tried to rationalize her behavior, stressed, frustrated by delays, stuck in a middle seat, but deep down, she knew none of that could excuse the way she had treated him. Amanda had prided herself on her honesty, her bluntness, often wearing it like armor. But now, in the quiet of her kitchen, those traits felt like fragile excuses for behavior she couldn't defend. The truth was undeniable, her words had come from a place of prejudice, something she had never confronted. She thought about Nathaniel's composure, his grace under pressure, and it was in that moment that she realized how much she lacked those qualities. She thought about his sacrifice and couldn't shake the feeling that she had failed him in a way she might never be able to make right. Her gaze drifted to her phone on the counter, and for a moment, she hesitated. What was she looking for? A part of her wanted to learn more about Nathaniel, to find a way to express her sorrow to his family, or perhaps to contribute to whatever cause he had dedicated his life to. Another part of her wanted to push the whole incident into the farthest recesses of her mind, pretend it never happened, and move on. But Nathaniel's face wouldn't leave her thoughts. The headline kept repeating in her mind, "Local soldier killed during humanitarian mission overseas." Amanda began scrolling through articles, piecing together the fragments of Nathaniel's life. She learned that he had grown up in a small Ohio town, raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to support him and his younger sister. He had enlisted straight out of high school, driven by a desire to help others. His service had taken him around the globe, working on disaster relief and community rebuilding projects. With every detail, Amanda's regret deepened. Nathaniel wasn't just a soldier, he was someone's son, someone's brother, a man who had made the world better. And she, in her ignorance, had reduced him to a target for her irritation, a faceless stranger she had treated with disdain. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Amanda barely ate, barely spoke. When evening came, she sat by her window, staring out at the quiet street, her mind consumed by a single question: how had she let herself become this person? The next morning, Amanda woke with a strange determination. She couldn't undo what she had said to Nathaniel, but she could choose to be different moving forward. She could face the discomfort of confronting her biases and commit to change. It wouldn't be easy, she knew that much, but it felt necessary. The weight of her guilt was heavy, but it also sparked something in her she hadn't felt in years, the desire to be better. For the following days, Amanda was consumed by introspection. She replayed moments from her past where she had dismissed or judged others. Each instance, once brushed off as harmless, now felt like a painful reminder of how far she had to go. Nathaniel's story had become a mirror, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths she had long ignored. She started small, reading articles and watching documentaries about bias, inequality, and the experiences of people in uniform. She wanted to understand what she had overlooked, the weight of lives she had once dismissed without thought. Each new story left her raw, but resolute. One evening, she came across a foundation created in Nathaniel's honor. The website detailed his humanitarian efforts and outlined the foundation's mission: to provide aid to underprivileged communities and offer scholarships to children affected by conflict. As Amanda scrolled through the testimonials, her chest tightened, and her eyes welled up with tears. Nathaniel had touched so many lives, and she had been blind to his humanity. Without hesitation, Amanda donated to the foundation, but it didn't feel like enough. She wanted to do more. She reached out, asking how she could contribute, whether through volunteering or helping with fundraising efforts. A reply came the next morning, inviting her to an upcoming event in Columbus, Ohio, honoring Nathaniel's legacy. Nervously, Amanda arrived at the event. She wasn't sure what to expect or how she would be received, but the crowd was diverse, people from all walks of life, united by their shared respect for Nathaniel. His mother stood at the front, her quiet strength undeniable as she spoke about her son's commitment to helping others. When the event ended, Amanda approached her. "Mrs. Carter," she began, her voice trembling. "I sat next to your son on a flight not long ago. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I've since learned about his life and his sacrifice. I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry for everything." Mrs. Carter looked at Amanda with a mixture of curiosity and kindness. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathaniel had a way of touching people, even in the smallest moments. Amanda nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "He did more than I can put into words." The two women stood in silence, and Amanda continued, "I want to do better, to honor him in whatever way I can. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." Mrs. Carter placed a hand on Amanda's shoulder. "The best way to honor him," she said gently, "is to live with the same compassion he did. That's a journey only you can take." Those words stayed with Amanda long after she left the event. Over the next year, she immersed herself in volunteer work, helping organize drives for veterans and advocating for programs supporting underprivileged youth. Each step felt like a small piece of redemption, a way to channel her regret into something meaningful. But perhaps the most profound change came in how she approached her everyday life. Amanda began listening more, judging less, and treating every interaction as an opportunity to show kindness. She knew she couldn't undo her past, but she could shape her future. Nathaniel's story had taught her a lesson she wouldn't forget: every word, every action, carries weight, and it's never too late to choose better.